Welcome back to the Michigan Business Beat, brought to you on the Michigan Business Network. And we are here at the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island. And why are we here? Well, one thing is, it's the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce's annual policy conference. So who do you have when you have a policy conference? Policymakers. So here we are with U.S. Senator Gary Peters. Gary, it's always good to see you.
It's great to be with you, Chris, as always.
How you doing?
I'm well. I'm well.
You know, I don't ask that lightheartedly. Your job's not an easy one.
It is time consuming, and yeah, absolutely. But things are well.
Are they? Okay, so I was going to ask you about the tenor in DC because it seems to be getting a little better. It seems to be not as partisan, not as argumentative, and people aren't saying nasty things about each other.
Yeah. Well, it is always a challenge, but we try to work together in a bipartisan way. I take great pride, as you know, in working in a bipartisan way, and been ranked as the most bipartisan,
Second most, yeah,
second most in the U.S.
that.
Senate, and that's about trying to find common ground. And I find when you do that and you're working on legislation, that builds a relationship that then translates to the next bill and the next piece, and you start looking at each other not as political rivals, but as folks who may have different views, but nevertheless can find common ground and solve problems. So,
well, that's what democracy is.
It is. It is indeed. You know, there's one thing about election time, but when elections are over, you got to govern, you got to solve problems, and that's what people expect, and they should demand that from their elected officials.
And what do they always say? The best compromise is one that makes everybody a little angry.
No, that's usually, that's true. That's probably true.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you try to get in the middle too, that you tend to anger if you're looking at the political spectrum.
Yeah.
When you find common ground, that means the far left and the far right are not going to be happy with you. So you have like both sides angry at you, not just one side angry at you.
You know, my dad said to me once, he said, public service is something you have to do. But remember, it's the best way to do the right thing and lose friends.
Well, yeah.
And there's a little of that element.
Well, that is true. Sometimes you'll make decisions that people don't agree on. There's the saying in local government, it says enemies come and go. Or no, friends come and go, but enemies just grow.
Yeah.
So, that does sometimes go with it.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, listen, you've been very busy with a number of issues. Let's talk about Selfridge and what's going on there with the tank.
Yeah, we're really excited about what's happening at Selfridge. We have right now two old platforms, the KC-135. These are fueling aircraft that have been around since the early 1960s or the late 50s, old aircraft. It's time. In fact, when I was out, the aircraft that I was looking at was built in 1958, and the guy said, "That's really old." And I said, "I was born in 1958." He goes, "I'm sorry, sir, I meant vintage." But these are old. And so now there's 8 of them out there, but we have the KC-46s that the Air Force just announced. It was very competitive. There were 10 states aggressively looking to get these aircraft. There are only 2 squadrons available, and we snagged one of them. Wow. And we have 12 of them coming in, so it's a 50% increase. And this is an aircraft now which will be like the other one. It's going to be around 50 years, and it'll be at Selfridge. But the platform, what's really exciting for me, too, is that it represents more than just a fueling aircraft. It'll also be a command and control for other aircraft. What I'm looking at, I put language in the Appropriations Committee to continue to research. These are collaborative combat aircraft, which are basically unmanned, autonomous systems.
Yeah.
They fly along with a pilot. The pilot will actually command not just his or her aircraft, but all of these CCAs that will be flying around as well. And it will likely fly with KC-46s. So we could get that next generation aircraft in Selfridge, which would be really great.
Hopefully this is going to change confrontations around the planet as technology comes in. Most important, I hope it keeps everybody out of conflict.
Yeah, that's the goal.
And that's the case.
Yeah, peace through strength.
Yeah. So the southern border is always in the news, but we have a huge northern border.
We do.
All right. So you're doing some work there, too.
I am. Yeah. And I remind my colleagues every day, and there is a northern border, too. Yeah. I chair Homeland Security Committee, and my responsibility are all the borders of the country. But the northern border needs resources, and we're seeing incursions coming across on a regular basis. I just was able to secure funding through my position to create a northern border coordination center, which is going to coordinate all the elements of the Department of Homeland Security all along the northern border. And we're looking to locate that at Selfridge Air National Guard Base.
Oh my God, that's like perfect. All right, for protecting USPS, because I've got my own thoughts on this, but when you look at the cost efficiency of it to send a letter, there's no real alternative,
Mhm.
right?
Right, right.
So what do we do there? I mean, there's been talk of privatization. There's been all this stuff that's people kind of kicking around. What do you think is the inevitable?
Well, we want to keep the Postal Service with the form that it is because it provides a really indispensable public function. And that means that they deliver to every single address in America every day, and that's service first is first and foremost. And it really goes back to the beginning of the Postal Service when Ben Franklin was the first Postmaster General, and our framers said we need a Postal Service to connect this new country and connect everybody together. And that hasn't changed. Every address needs to have that. But they have to be able to break even. They're running a business. Letters are not being sent like they used to. It's more packages, so they have to change. Right now, they're going through a number of those changes. And I'm a guy all about change, but I also want to make sure they're doing it in a way that doesn't damage service. I just asked for, and the Postmaster General just put a freeze on some of the changes they were making. Here, as we're up here in the Upper Peninsula, that was a real concern with folks up here. The Postal Service was going to shut down a processing center here in the UP, and all the mail, instead of going there, was going to go to Wisconsin before it came back to the UP. Even if you're just mailing it from Marquette to Munising, it's got to go to Wisconsin and then come back. And that's not that great of idea, especially in the wintertime. It's really a bad idea. And so we've paused that and said, let's get a better sense of how we make sure, especially our rural areas. The rural areas rely on the Postal Service more than anybody.
Well, and you're also talking about jobs in an area that needs jobs.
Absolutely.
That's important stuff.
Absolutely.
Jerry, it's always good to see you. And thank you for representing us in the job that you do there. And please pass on our best to the family.
Oh, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be with you, Chris.
All right.
Take care.
U.S. Senator Gary Peters, and we are coming to you from the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island, and we're here for the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce's annual policy conference. I'm Chris Holman. You're watching the Michigan Business Beat on the Michigan Business Network.